Hello, everyone. Today we're on the Afterburn podcast, episode 8. So we're just a week removed from the major, and fortunately, we don't have any roster moves, or the rosters, rumors haven't started yet. But we got some good community tweets to go over and some sentiments from the major as well. So as always, we have our co-host here, and
Yep, I'm in some.
I'm Blink.
yeah. So we're just gonna talk about some of the community topics that have come up since the major here and there. The first one we're gonna go into is the stats. So for any of you who follows the Twitter scene, will see that if you know Shift, I believe it's Shift, right? That post it. I forget or not,
Yeah, it
but
used to be. Yeah, they acquired Octane GG.
yeah, they
Because
acquired
before it was
Octane
Octane
GG.
GG, but now it's Shift.
Yeah, it used to be Shift, but you'll see it if you follow Wikipedia. I think they retweet and stuff. But they always post a thing at the end of the most highly rated players for the tournament, and it goes through, give a rating, has goals, I think goals per game stat, assists per game stat, goal participation, saves, etc. And just kind of goes through and then gives a rating. It's not bad from a baseline perspective, but I think when everyone took a look at the one from this major, it was ridiculously off. I remember it had Atomic at a 1.34, the best player in the whole tourney, and then the next best player was a 1.14, and no offense to Atomic, but I don't think anyone thought he was even in the top 8 or 10 players for the tournament this year. And so the stats kind of put him as the best player at the whole tourney. I think it's a little off, and the thing for me is I just think we should maybe look into finding more advanced stats that could better portray how people actually play at a major than just kind of use these really basic stats. I know it's not easy to do, but it's something I can look at for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the stats, if I have the tweet in front of me, we have Atomic as by far the best player in the fall major. We have no one from Moist on the list as well. The order goes Atomic, Vatira, Archie, First Cure, Oli, apparently Jack, Daniel, Jnaps, Itachi, Joyous. So from what we know, most of the rating it comes from it's highly weighted towards score per game, goals, and then assists, and then saves also bump up your statistical rating as well. But they don't really take into account any other details than that. There's
Yeah,
some small percentage for shot percentage and goal participation, but the main factors towards the rating are score and goals per game.
yeah. So one thing I'll highlight on this, just because I do follow, for anyone who knows hockey, and or in other sports in general, they have much more advanced stats that people have kind of formulated and done to the game. And I think Rock League's been out long enough we can start to do that. So I think a few simple ones too they could implement that'd be really just interesting also to look at. Also, there'd have to be some human element for kind of what constitutes it. But the first one we could get into is we'll talk about goals, or we'll talk about more specifically shots on net. So something hockey does, I think, would be also coolly applied to Rock League would be they do high danger shots versus low danger shots percentage. So kind of what this entails would be a high danger shot or high scoring chance would be a chance in which the ball should go in the net, or is a very high percentage of it going to the net, and then a low danger scoring chance is more of a shot that was done from half field in Rock League, right, where it's the defender should save it 10 out of 10 times, or it's a pretty basic shot or something that just expected to be saved versus a high danger scoring chance is you have an open net, or they're low on boost, etc. A lot of things. I think this would just be kind of a good one to implement because it would give us more of a chance of do we have players who are scoring on low danger shots well, or do we have players who are scoring high danger shots well? And I think it would just kind of give a better entailment for that. And then it also kind of works on the flip side where you could have saves and you could split off saves into high danger save percentage versus low danger day percentage. So you could actually see what goalies are actually making quality saves versus just quantity of saves. Because another issue with Rock League, and I think you guys can agree on this, is if you're a bad team, you're just going to have more saves because you just get wailed on the entire series versus good teams have to make less saves. And it's not really, I think, fair to have that stat when it's so skewed towards the worst teams are going to have better saves and then the better teams are going to have less saves because they don't get shot on. So I think if we had some variety within it, we could kind of see more of who the best players actually are, and the stats could represent that more. But that's just kind of my take on it from the stats perspective.
What goes into the exact rating? Because I see over here Atomic has a 1.3 rating, and then Vatiri has a 1.8. Are you saying it's mostly goal participation? How do they? I think honestly, however they do the rating itself is probably pretty bad because Atomic definitely shouldn't be number one. And yeah, there's a lot of missing players here in the top 10 that should be here.
I don't know if the formula is public, but they do have a formula that they've talked about where they basically give each like stat a weight factor, and then it goes into that to like calculate the overall rating. I don't know the
Yeah, then they
exact
do
like
some sort
formula
of
though.
scaling to account for like what 1.0 rating means and what greater than 1.0 and less than 1.0 means. Like they have some adjustments for that. All we know is that there's like weightings towards each of the statistics that make up like the overall rating.
And I love the premise behind it. I think the premise behind the way they do the rating is correct in that they take, each value differently and weight it differently. Like that's really good and really cool to see that they've done that. I just think it'd be better if they had better stats to base it off of than off like the basic ones they're basing off now. It's just kind of like I just think there's room to make it even more in depth and kind of cooler to see and evaluate the skill of a player than the way it is currently done. It wouldn't be easy though. It would require someone from a third party avenue to like make some type of program or something that identifies what is, a high danger shot or what is a low danger shot, and then put it into the stats. Because I mean that's how it's done in hockey, right? Like when a shot is recorded, it's not like, oh, is that a high? Like they have a system that kind of like processes each shot to determine whether or not it is. And it's also like one of the things where it's like it would be like a machine learning based process where like it'd probably be worse with less data, so it'd be kind of bad at the start, but then once you get like a better baseline and more competition to feed the data, it would only get like the model would only get better as the years would go on. Kind of like how it works generally.
Yeah, like right now we have like it's an okay statistical system. Like we've had this for like a couple years now, so like starting out, I mean it's pretty good because we already know that overall score per game doesn't truly indicate performance of a player in a given match. Like if you score like a tap in open net, okay, congratulations. You already have like 100 points for a goal, 50 points for like I don't know, whatever. Like you get a ton of points just from scoring. And you also get a ton of points from just making saves, and you can just farm saves where that doesn't really indicate if you have a great defense. It could mean that the opponents are really taking shots over and over against you because they know your defense is bad, or because they keep giving away possession and it helps you accumulate saves, or you're just getting out pressured. But it doesn't really indicate that like you actually have really good defense in a particular game. So I think it needs to be revisited.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole idea around stats, right? Is you have these statistics, but they never really paint the full picture. It's how you interpret them, and you can interpret them a lot of different ways, right? And I think that's also an argument as to like this is a little bit slightly off topic, I guess, but like we saw Vatira got like offensive MVP for some reason when like everybody really thought it should have been like Astral, for example, at the fall major, right? But
Yeah.
people are like, oh, like Vatira deserved it because he had like the best stats for offense. And it's like, well, he had the best stats for offense. Why is he not in top two? Like a team, like I think we've seen them both play. Like
Yeah.
Astral like way better on offense than Vatira, so it's just clear the stats don't capture that as they do right now. So yeah, there's a lot of indicators that the stats could definitely be improved upon, and I think there's a lot of like stats you could even not necessarily are obvious, like maybe things like how often does when you lose possession does it go to your teammate, like how like
Yeah.
15 to the right teammate. It's really important in Rocket League these days. So yeah, definitely an interesting thing to think about, and I wonder how easy it is to do with the way it is done on the back end of like Psionics, how they capture the stats all together right now. I don't know how complicated that system is, but could definitely be improved, which would be really helpful for analyzing these performances of players.
Yeah, so just to make sure there's not any confusion, we're not asking for the scoreboard stats to be changed. Those should stay the exact same in terms of like when you go and play a twos match and it's just like goals, assists, saves, like that's fine. That shouldn't be changed. We're just saying from like only a pro esports perspective, you could kind of like from the replays, like you could use backs or not backs mod. What's this like called, like ball chasing or whatever? You could get that to like analyze it and then have it because it analyzes every replays and like add in the stats there and just kind of have it for the esports broadcast side. We don't want it added to like the scoreboard in the game because that'd be ridiculous. There'd be way too many stats to add for that. But
Yeah,
and then
I think piggybacking on the idea of the high percentage or low percentage like shots, I think those would make it really interesting. Then you could really figure out what defines a really good striker or someone who
yeah,
just gets lucky and scores a bunch of open nets thanks to their teammates.
the other cool thing about that one too is it can really start to develop a team's identity more. So you can see if they're a team that just puts on a ton of low danger shots. So maybe they get a ton of shots, but they're just all low danger, not that threatening. Versus maybe there's a team that does like maybe they don't get many shots, but they're all high danger opportunity shots that could be goals. So you can really start to see identities of like, is there a strategy to just put on like as many shots as possible? is there a strategy to like develop a play and try to get like a high quality shot before striking? And you could kind of, I think it would help like evolve the depth for how you could perceive a game and how like team strategies are. Because right now it's just kind of like it's all based off like the eye test, which is like very good, and a lot of commentators are very good at like doing it out. But it's also very nice to have stats kind of like back up what you see from the eye test to really confirm it. And I think Blink also brought up a good point on like it doesn't just have to be like shots and saves. You can also do it for like offensively. One of the biggest things is to like get around people, right? So you could have like a stat for like how many times did this person like percent wise get around a person when they had the ball? Do they get around like the first defender 10% of the time, 20% of the time, 15% of the time? That'd be another cool stat to see who the best offensive player was, because I think the best offensive players would be the players that like caused two players to get out of the play because of the way they did the air dribble or the way they like controlled the ball, etc. And also like I think another good one Blink also mentioned was like pass percentage. So like did you put the 50 to your teammate or did you pass it to your teammate successfully versus like unsuccessfully? Would be a really cool one to see as well. So not just like assists on a goal, but just like general passes on your own side of the field or like offensive side of the field. How many did you actually complete and how successful it was? That's a common stat from like soccer or football, whatever you want to call it. I think you could take. They have like I don't know if you guys watched the World Cup at all, but it just finished today. But one of the stats they always have is like passes and then passes completed. I think that'd be cool in that directly too to see like number of passes teams made and the percentage of that passes completed that were like successful. Would also be really neat to see from like a team's identity as well. But there's just so many areas I think you could try to implement from stats that could like make it a lot cooler for the viewers as well to engage in, to see teams. And I don't think some of them will be that hard to implement because I think we have a lot of smart people in the Rocket League scene, and I think a lot of them would love to take a crack at like trying to add these in and get them to go.
Yeah, no, I think for sure you brought up a good point with how it could really elevate the depth of the analysis that we have in Rocket League and the strategy, because we have, we've seen the strategy kind of develop over the history of the esport, but it's always kind of just been more the meta changing and like new mechanics and players just getting faster. It's never really been like a lot of strategy has been put into these like 3v3. It's been getting better recently, and I feel like we definitely see that with Gen G. But it's still like at the end of the day, I feel like there's a lot of analysis like just lacking from the broadcast itself, and if we had stats to show that, if we saw like even more things added to the analysis of Rocket League, it'd be a lot more interesting as a viewer to even to watch, and like understand why these teams or how these teams play, and just look at it from like an analytical perspective. It'd be really cool. Like imagine like you could see like heat maps too, so where like players have been on like certain series in the past and really love to go and like seeing, these are things to look out for. These are kind of like matchups you want to see, and like we could actually have some stats to back that up. That'd be really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
so
heat
ball
maps
chasing actually
is,
has heat maps.
yeah, the heat maps is out. It's just they haven't. It would be cool if the heat maps could be implemented more, maybe into like the analyst desk of
Yeah,
like the
they don't really
RLCS
do a lot of
broadcast.
analyzing.
Yeah,
Right.
I think there
They
could be a
even
lot
really like
more.
go Reagan too.
I think there could be a lot more stats that could be used for like analyze, and it's not on like the analyst as people to go do it. I think it's kind of more on like I don't think they have the tools to do it themselves. This is more on like people who are passionate about like statistics and programming to go and figure out a way to kind of get this into the replay system so that when it analyzes it, it can chew out the data that then the analyst can look at and figure out like what teams are good at specific things, etc.
This happens in like professional sports, especially like the NBA. They actually have like a whole panel of people who are like fetching stats live time and then feeding that data to the commentators who
Yeah.
discuss that. That's exactly how it works in basketball. But it'd
Yeah,
be
just
cool if like, sorry, go ahead.
no, you finish, and then I'll just add.
Yeah, so it's like I know they've tried it within Rocket League before. I don't know how far that went, where they tried giving some stats to the analysts. So that's how they're able to bring up like demos per games and number of big boosts stolen. But like, although the idea was good, we never really saw anything that amounted to more than just, oh, this person has the highest demos per game over the last tournament, etc.
Yeah, I was just gonna say if we've seen it in real sports in terms of like advanced analytics being brought into broadcasts, and you can even just look into other esports. Like I watch League, and they have more than just the basic scoreboard you have in League, right? If you watch it, you can clearly tell that the people in the like commentators' ears or analysts' ears are feeding them the stats, or at least they come in prepared with stats, because like they have so many advanced stats of like they have gold per minute, they have like gold per minute at 15 advantage for laners, they have like gold per minute advantage at like 30 minutes, they have experience lead at like 5 minutes, they have all these stats that really like let them individualize kind of like each player in each lane and like figure out like how good or bad they are, even if they're on a bad team, etc. Like league has done a good job. If you want to see a way like an esport has implemented more advancements in the broadcast, just kind of go there and watch one game and you'll see it very clearly that they have all the stats and they're much more kind of advanced than just basic like kills or assists that would be in the League of Legends game. But yeah, that's
Cool.
pretty much it for like it. I'd just love to see Rocket League kind of expand on it more, and I think they've done a great job so far, and it'd be really cool to just kind of add another layer of in-depth focus to like the viewers to really draw them in. And I think especially now where we start to see like the teams are getting much more strategical rather than like the meta constantly evolving with mechanics, so it'd be cool to kind of see that into the stats as well and just kind of enhance the experience for viewing.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
But that was stats. That's the nerdy thing for the day done. I do love stats, so that's a sucker topic for me. But the next one I'm going to talk about is the EU versus the NA crowd. So I know a lot of people, or if they haven't, when they watch Worlds, a lot of the European fans were very mad at NA for leaving. I forget, did NA leave early in the finals because it was like
Yeah.
a European or something, whatever?
I think
but
BDS
Well,
was
it's
slapping
like the game
G2.
already finished, so everyone already watched 8 hours
That too.
live, so they were really tired
Oh
and
yeah,
just
that's what it
decided
was.
to
Yeah,
leave.
NA
was
left
Sunday.
before BDS gave like their speech or something. Like they left after the series was done. I think what is what it was.
Yeah, they
But,
instantly left and didn't stay for the
yeah.
crowning of the champions.
Which for I don't know if anyone follows NA sports, but that's actually good. A lot of people will leave on their own team before the game even finishes most of the time. But if you've ever been to a hockey game or a basketball game or a football game, but this one's interesting because this crowd was in Europe, right? This time it was in Europe, and the Europeans kind of left for some of it after like one of the European teams lost in the quarters. A lot of the fans left for a bit and then allegedly came back. I'm not quite sure if they did or not. And they were booing the NA crowd the whole time that we were told EU fans would never do to NA. NA people, they would never boo the NA. They're just all for everyone there, which was not shown at this lane. And then I think my favorite was they just blamed it on who was the org? It was I think Carmine Corps. They just blamed it on the French and Carmine Corps fans. They're like, oh, it's not Europe. It's only the French and the Carmine Corps fans. They're the only ones booing anyone. And I don't know. To me, it's just like a bunch of excuses and like. I have no issue with what either of the crowds did. The only issue I have is with these European online warriors thinking that this European crowd is so much better than the NA crowd, and the NA crowd is like disgusting, disrespectful people. I don't know. That's the only thing that strikes me as odd. But
I think it's ironic. I mean, like this is really the continent that loves their football, and you guys already know enough about how football fans are and their lack of respect towards other teams and their adoration of their own home team. So I don't know. I think crowds will be crowds. It doesn't really matter if it's NA or EU. It's just hilarious that like some European fans will try to be offended and say, actually, it's only NA fans and NA crowds that are disrespectful. I think that's just a very immature and hilarious take.
Yeah, I blame G2 honestly for why the people were leaving because they didn't even they didn't even put on like a show for the last series. They just kind of flopped, and I think a lot of people are like, okay, this is boring. Like I don't want to watch this. Like obviously BDS won, and like I think it was also at that time we want NA to win more. It's on NA soil. It's everybody wanted G2 to win because they've been struggling so hard. They almost were there before, then they missed out due to their lack of ice.
PTSD for Blink right now, thinking back on the G240 final.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be expected
love
that
to
the
really.
home crowd would cheer for their home teams. I think I don't understand why that's such a
It's a
surprise
culture
to
diff,
people.
I guess.
It's like unfortunate though, right? Like you would kind of want like people to stick around, especially if you're like BDS yourself. You just win. You don't want to see people leaving. You want to like see people like cheering, I guess. But I guess it's hard, right? Because you're in another country. It's like a little bit weird if they would cheer for you, or like I don't know if you're not entitled to that cheering at the end of the day either, right? So
yeah, to me, I'm gonna say it's just the common thing of at the end of the day, if it's in NA, it's a home crowd for NA teams. If it's in Europe, it's gonna be a home crowd for Europe teams, and the competitor shouldn't feel bad if they go to an away building and then don't get cheered when they win. It's the same for real sports. If you watch like NBA or NHL, if they're in the opposing team's building when they win the Stanley Cup or they win the NBA championship, they don't get cheered. like the fans just like maybe some stay and cheer, but like half of them leave. It's just kind of what comes with the competition is just that if you're in an away building or an away region, you just won't get as many cheers than if you win at home, and that should just be part of the players' enticement. So when the event is in their hometown, they just want to win that much more to have it be that much more epic for the victory celebration. But
Yeah, I think on top of that too, like BDS wasn't really a team that people really cared for that much. They didn't have like a lot of personality. Like it could just be language barrier. They're like French, but I think that's another reason. Like we never had an example where I don't know. This is kind of dogging on NA, but we never had an example where NA like blasted a team like an EU team in the final, and it wasn't even like fun. And like any NA team that like we had Justin, Turbo Pulsa, and Garrett was like the only one I think we had other than Genji recently in EU, or was there another team? I think that's it. Maybe like a DreamHack, and like that final was actually entertaining, right? That's why like crowds were cheering and like loving it, and like everybody loves Justin, everybody loves Garrett. Like they had a lot of personality coming from NA too, and like obviously this Turbo Pulse, so like there's a huge story behind them winning. So of course, like even if you're in EU, like you probably still like that team. And it's probably similar for Genji because they had Appjack and all these. So I just don't think there's a lot of like fair comparison to say just to go on NA and like dog on them and say like EU better for crowd. It's also just weird. Like why do you have to complain about that when EU literally won? So I just think like, and then at the end of the day, like a lot of EU onliners, like you said, just love to dog on NA a lot. So
and then there's one more person that I want to talk about. His name's Johnny Boy, and he had a big tweet. He said, "Oh please, SSG, G2, and Genji all got support from the EU crowd, and everyone, including KC fans, stuck around to congratulate Genji, except V1 have Calm as the villain, and FaZe has a lot of controversies as an org, and therefore that's why they got booed and didn't get as much cheering." So shout out to Johnny for having the courage to make such an insanely hot take. You guys comment on that?
Wasn't there another? Sorry, go ahead, Gib.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only thing I really have to say on that is like the whole thing about FaZe not getting cheering because their org is in a controversial state right now is, I think that's very based because I mean G2 isn't in a great state of an org also going into this. Many orgs weren't in like good standings. I don't think that's really a reason to not cheer on players. That's like a really poor excuse to not cheer on players for like external factors that they don't control for that team. Like I don't think any fan goes into that thinking, oh my gosh, FaZe Clan, man, their org they're just so ashamed I can't cheer for First Killer. But
also G2 is based in like Sweden or like a European org. They had a lot of Europe like G2 fans over there. That's why they got more support as well. And I also think like you just can't say like the main thing I think EU players are salty or EU onliners were salty about was just like the people leaving the crowd, like the stands when BDS like was getting their championship. So like it wasn't like maybe the best way they could receive their award, right? But like we're never gonna have a case where we're gonna be able. Well, we might, but we haven't seen a case where that happened for an NA team, right? Where they got like they just blasted a EU team in EU soil. I feel like it probably would be the same if there was a NA team that was just like constantly winning, and like people just would start leaving the stands because they wouldn't care anymore. I don't think it's just like NA's bad for that reason. I think if you put EU in the same situation, it's gonna be the exact same thing.
We'll see this year. Blink Worlds is going to be in Europe, and NA is going to 4-0 blast a European team in finals, and then we'll see. We'll see how they react.
We'll see. Yeah, hopium. That'd be cool. I would like that.
He'd be a happy man. Be the happiest podcast we ever record.
All smiles.
All smiles. But was that everything on the Johnny Boy and Sam? Do you have anything to add?
No, other than that, just completely disagree. Like, I don't know why Johnny thinks that like the EU crowd is so loving and wholesome and cheering for the NA team. I don't see. I think it's just straight copium. Like, there's no difference between crowds of different regions. Like, sure, maybe European crowds have better chance. That's about it.
I was gonna say that. I think maybe like
okay, like NA chants of like USA are pretty lame. I'll give them that, but I don't see how the crowd personalities are gonna differ so much between regions.
Yeah. To me, it's like I don't disagree. I think European crowds are definitely more creative with the chants and might be more loud on average. But I don't think NA crowds are bad, and I just don't like it when the European online warriors try to like make it seem as NA's like disrespectful and should be ashamed of themselves. I think at the end of the day, you have different cultures. Both crowds are good, but they're just both a different kind of like flavor of what you're gonna get. But they're both good and like give great crowds and energy at the end of the day.
Didn't Virtual also say like, oh, LAN should only happen in the UK? I'm like, no one wants. First off, nobody wants to go to UK except for UK people. Okay, nobody wants to go there. Second off, like, I'll take.
Third off, you left your region because you can't win in it. So
Yeah,
know.
you have no opinion you can say has any validity behind it. So sorry, buddy.
And then you went and got what? Sorry, did they win a game? They got 09,
No,
right?
they got 09.
They got 09. So
They dominated APAC just to get 09 to the major.
yeah,
that's very embarrassing. Yeah.
Also, I will say this to Blink's point: and then we'll move on to the next topic. But if you did Worlds at France, and KC was in the finals versus an NA team, and NA 4-0'd, they would leave. They would not cheer for the NA team. I'm sorry, but you could not convince me in the world the France crowd would cheer for the NA team.
They would boo.
They would boo. They might throw trash on the stage for all we know. I'm just saying, like, I don't think people understand. Europe isn't this like gold mine of like just positivity for every team. I think you'd be hard pressed to find them be positive if like KC lost in the World Finals to an NA team in France. But yeah, that's it on that. So moving on to our next one. This will be a little bit of a quicker topic, but an interesting debate kind of sparked up on Reddit and on the Twitter sphere after this after Genji won the major, and it was that Appjack was the best player in the world, undoubtedly, of anyone right now in the moment was the take, and they're saying that it's been the first time that we've been able to say this since for a long time. The only other argument was like maybe you could have argued it for Monkey Moon at the end of Worlds, but they're saying like this is the first time you could doubt or you could argue someone's the best player in the world undoubtedly for like a while. And what do you guys think on this?
Sure. I mean, you can argue that. I don't think, like, the first time in a while, I think that part's just plain wrong. Like, that is just straight up wrong. We've seen best players in the world before, even if it changes day by day. That doesn't matter. Like, all that matters is at an event. Like, the World Championships, like, sure, we didn't even see BDS at this major, but at the time, during the World Championship, yeah, we could argue that Monkey Moon was really, like, on fire, the best player in the world. Even if he wasn't the best player in the world the next day, that doesn't really matter at all. Like, so definitely disagree for that point. As for apparently Jack himself, I don't know. I think he played fine. He looked good. Whether he's the number one, it's not disputable best player in the world, I'm not that quite convinced yet. I don't know. I'll give Blink a chance to talk about this.
Yeah. I think he was maybe the best player on that day, but like, I think the reason Genji won was more of their team synergy. I think Appjack did play really well. Like, he played the best I've seen him play. He keeps playing better, which is great for him. But best player in the world, I'm biased because I always will think Daniel and Beast Mode are like the two best players in the world. Maybe First Killer when he's speaking, just because like I don't know, they're just unreal. But undisputably is stupid to say in my opinion. It's like like next regional we're gonna see like a new team like dominate and be like, oh, we're gonna forget about Appjack being best player in the world. Or like next major, like I feel like if you want to say best player undisputably, they have to win like a major and then the next regional or two and like look fantastic still, you know? Like it's still a little bit early for me to say best player in the world, also, especially when Chronic also was looking amazing on that team and Noli was also playing like really well and like passing and enabling Appjack to look that great in the first place. So
yeah, to me, I'm just gonna say I think if you're gonna be labeled undoubtedly the best player in the world, it has to be for a certain level of consistency for me. I don't think you should ever make that claim for any player if they just pop off for one major or they just pop off for like just Worlds. I think over like a 1 to 2 year period or longer, they have to dominate for that long, and then you can start to maybe, claim they're the best player in the world undoubtedly. I don't think we've seen any player do that in the last 3 years. It's just been inconsistent. So many teams just randomly, do well and pop off. And honestly, the only time I think we've seen it in Rock League is the Dig era when they won. I think you could have maybe claimed one of those players was undoubtedly the best player in the world when they were literally winning everything. The other one was when Devo, and I think he won Worlds in season 3. He was like pretty claimed to be one of the best players for like a couple of those seasons. I think you maybe could have claimed when he won Worlds, he was the best player ever in the world in season 3 when Devo won. And I think those are like maybe the only other one maybe is Justin when he won Worlds, because he had a really good string of results for like 2 years leading up to when he won Worlds, and then when he won Worlds, I thought he was undoubtedly the best player at that event, and also like over the last couple of years. So like those are kind of the only 3 situations to me that stand out, where it's like Justin could have been maybe the best player when he won Worlds, Devo when he won Worlds, and I think maybe K-Dop or Turbo when they were on that Dignitas dynasty streak. But outside of that, I don't think anyone's had sustained dominance long enough to really stake that claim. But I'd love to see Gen G go on a run here, and then we could claim Appjack's the best player in the world after they win Worlds and like 2 of the 3 majors or something.
Yeah, I think people have some varying definitions of best player in the world, where you're going more up for consistency, results, and accomplishments, like most accomplished player, or if you get to the Dig era, then you go to like greatest of all time. Whereas I think people right now are just, I really doubt that they're trying to say that we're going into most accomplished player. I think just for this event, they're saying that apparently Jack was the best player in the world. Because there's no way that people are talking about that over past 3 regionals, and before that, apparently Jack barely had any RLCS results. He was never in top like 10 contention for best player in the world lists in Europe. So it has to be by this event. They're saying that he played better than Nolly and Chronic. I think that's the argument people are trying to say, which in itself, I kind of lean more on Blink's side, which I think they won not because of apparently Jack's individual dominance, but because of their strength as a team. I don't think it was like Devo season 3 where he like Woody hard carried his team to the world championship and won it all there. I don't think it's the same thing here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with
I think you're right when you say it's like they're not really talking like definitely best player in the world. Maybe they just mean like best player in the world, like in this second in this major, like we're seeing him just for like right now. It's weird how they. Who was it that tweeted that was like?
I forget. I think it was
just
like
Bob's
Bob or
Pops,
something.
whatever.
I think
Yeah,
for
Bob.
me it's I think the wording stuff. I think it'd be better received if we talked about like Appjack was the best player at that event, or Appjack was the best player in the fall major. I think it would be much easier to kind of like
Maybe
digest
false
and
split.
false split than like trying to claim they're the best player in the world. Personally, I think it should maybe more geared towards like, yeah, he was the best player at that event, hands down. I could agree with that. I could get behind that take. I just think when you start to say like world, it's kind of like it's just
The level of like elite or prestige.
Yeah.
When you say that,
it's a level of
right?
prestige that's like a little kind of out there for just like a single event or a single like weekend.
For sure, yeah. Who do you think is going to be the best player in the world this season?
This season,
Yeah,
I don't know. I think that's a tough one.
too early.
I don't
Too early
know
to
yet.
tell. I'll put my money on Astral or someone from Gen G. Maybe Appjack or Chronic develops into something.
Yeah, it's weird because like Chronic, like that team, like I said, I don't know if I think I mentioned this before, but all those players, I don't think any of them I would put in my like top 5 players in NA individually. Maybe like at the very top of top 5. But when they come together as a team, they just like look unstoppable. And I think it is changing right now where we're having teams are not able to just rely on one crazy player like Beast Mode or Daniel. They have to have maybe 2 crazy players, or they have to like actually know how to play as a team. Really multiply each other's level.
I still think my hot take would be if Justin makes a roster change to a good team, I'm going to say he'll be the best player in the world this year. But if he just,
I think he still has.
if he stays on the same energy team, no chance ever. But if he gets onto a good team, or there's a thing where like, oh yeah, he's on a good team now, I think we could see him rise again to the same dominance he had before.
It's kind of weird how there's no real roster rumors. Okay, there's only 2 that I've heard so far. So one of them is Furio looking to sign Lost, which I predicted, by the way.
That makes more sense than Daniel, than Justin.
Or Justin, yeah, because of language barrier for sure.
Yeah.
And like the club also didn't look that great, so like good enough reason for Lost to leave, come to NA, other than like salary and stuff like that. And the second one was PK is actually looking to pick up Zanil for CPS, which I think is not a bad roster move, because it'll be Zanil and Cheese, which they play a lot together, so might be good synergy there. But I don't like. Obviously, don't think
We'll
they're
hear
gonna be
them.
top
Like
team,
I think it's just a little early. I mean, they'll come whenever. I don't know when the roster period
January
officially
8th.
starts.
That's when
but
that's when it finishes.
That's when it finishes. Yeah, so we probably won't hear anything for like
Yeah, it's not like 3 weeks.
people probably enjoy their Christmas. So we'll probably start to hear some things around like New Year's, I'd guess, or maybe a little before then. But people are probably not scrimming to try out because a lot of people are probably gonna go back to their families. But we'll
True,
see.
yeah, I probably won't hear it for like another week.
We'll get them
Oh, well.
eventually. Like there's gonna be changes. There's no
There's
way.
gotta
There's
be.
at least in Europe there'll be changes for sure. I don't know. And
And then
you
they
can
have
never
to be,
tell.
like,
You can never tell.
Energy has to make a move. There's no way they don't make a move.
I mean, hey,
Yeah.
they
I
can.
think,
They
I
can
think
come.
version 1.2 has to make a move, man.
Energy
This
can
is
come
energy we're
8th
talking
again or
about.
like 5th, 6th again and just
Yeah.
not make it and not make worlds if they really want. So
No way. No way.
they could do that.
Their
But,
careers are over if they do that.
then move on to our last topic of the day. This one's literally came like an hour before we recorded the podcast, but it was just kind of we've touched it briefly on the past, but it's just kind of a really interesting take by Appjack, so I just wanted to cover it. And he kind of gives a good, I think it gives a really good take and opinion on this. But he wants to basically raise the age requirement for RLCS to 17 or 18 with a grandfather clause for current pro players under the age so they can continue playing. And then he goes on to explain how basically 15 to 16-year-olds shouldn't really be open to the pressure of pro play that kind of Rocket League gives. It can be damaging to like just because of their young age and can damage them like personally and a lot of other things like psychologically. And he also just talks about how there's a lot of like legal issues and kind of like lack of general and social skill developments for those people because they kind of don't get a regular life and also just kind of overall health issues. He just goes into big about like also it's bad for their school because they like drop out of high school, they don't have anything to fall back on, so maybe they make like 600K for a really short 3-year Rocket League career, but they're not a streamer, and then they're out of Rocket League and they don't have a high school degree, they don't have anywhere to go, they don't have like any Rocket League job to pursue, and they're just kind of like stuck with they have money, but like what are you gonna do for the next 50 years of your life, etc. And he also just talks about how it'd be good for like the maturity level of the scene because everyone knows the Rocket League maturity level is really bad compared to other esports and very young, and it leads to a lot of issues with scrimming, a lot of issues with org signing, a lot of issues with parents need to be involved in going to lands, etc. But yeah, that was pretty much the base of it. What do you guys think on this?
Do you want to quickly explain what a grandfather clause is in case anybody doesn't know?
Yeah. So grandfather clause would just mean that any player. This is the only tricky part because like you'd have to define what is pro player. My take would be if you like, let's say Silence was to implement this at the end of this year, it would be any player I'd say that made a main event could be grandfathered in. I think that'd be fair. Anyone like that made the main event, like from qualifiers, so like you made the top 16 as main event, right? Any player that made top 16 would be grandfathered in. So even if they're under, let's say the age limit is set to 17, they could play. And then starting from the start of next year, any player that didn't make the main event and was under 17 could not play. Would essentially be grandfathered. Just mean anyone who's younger would be able to play regardless of the new rule, just because it'd be unfair to like cut Daniel, right? Because he's under 17. It's just kind of like, and I agree, like it'd be unfair to cut anyone who already went pro and was under 17. But I think it'd be a good rule like going forward.
Yeah, they could even do a thing where they like say they're gonna do it like a year from now.
Yeah.
And that way, like if you were gonna be pro this year, or because you're 15, you'll still be a pro next year, or whatever, or however long they wanna.
Oh, the last thing I just wanted to that Jack and I forgot to mention was that the other thing he said was like, not only would this help, but one of the issues right now with 15 is that you also have 13 and 14-year-olds also like just completely kind of like screwing over their social skills because they're playing Rocket League 10 hours a day and doing nothing else because they want to try to go pro at 15 when you're like literally that young, you haven't even like started high school, basically.
Yeah.
But...
I'm on the side of like I think it's good to give players a chance at a younger age, but the problem is I don't really have any good arguments against what he says, right? Like, so like let's say point number one, he brings up legal issues. We've already seen tons of legal issues where it's like something that's Rizzo has brought up that people like orgs have tried to screw over players because the players don't like read the contracts properly. They're not like how can a 15-year-old be a legal expert and understand like loopholes and contracts and stuff like that. Like we've already seen orgs taking advantage of people in not just Rocket League scene, although it's not as bad in Rocket League, I think. But we still have seen that before, that like we still have the occasional issues of orgs not paying players, contract issues, etc., not letting people go, legal issues. Second is like the social skills aspect. Like the thing is like apparently Jack isn't wrong on that side. Obviously, if you play Rocket League for 10 hours a day, you're gonna like have like inhibited social skills. If you drop out of school, especially if it's high school, you're gonna suffer academically. Like these are things that I would say are like facts and not really opinions. Like it's if you drop out of school, it's gonna affect your academics, like period. And I think that's what's causing a lot of like uproar. It's like people reading this are like, I don't like this. I don't know how to disagree, but I don't like it.
Are you
Yeah,
saying they don't like his opinion, or they don't like the
Yeah, they don't
age
like
limit
his
right
opinion. They don't like that he's right
now?
because they don't like because that's kind of like
I
similar
think
to
it's
what
like
I'm feeling
six.
right now. It's like I think I'm okay with having 15-year-olds play in ROCS, but he's also not wrong on any of his opinions. That's what I think. I don't see a good solution to this either. Like unless you try to make it a middle ground and raise the age to 16 or something.
I think 17 is my personal sweet spot.
I agree with that. Yeah.
I think when you're like, even like personally, I think I've mentioned this before, but I think when you're like 15 to 16, like you're still a little bit like childish. You don't have much of a personality, you're like being grown. Your still like social skills are like a little bit inhibited. I know like if you're gonna become a Rocket League pro, you're probably not gonna have great social skills altogether because you're growing Rocket League, right? But I think when you do get like a little bit older, you get a little more interesting of a person to be, and we also need that for the esport to like, get more fans and actually be behind these players because yes, they can be cracked mechanically, and like yeah, I know people have been like behind Daniel because he's insane, but if you like other than his insane pop-up moments, nobody's screaming Daniel for like his
Personality.
interviews or personality because
No
he's
offense
never
to
had
him, it's
he's
bad.
I don't
never had
even know
one.
what his personality is.
We don't even know
Yeah.
what he is because yeah,
No offense
I
to the
think
15-year-olds, but when's the last time you saw a 15-year-old come in and was like, "Wow, that was a great interview," or like, "Wow, that
yeah,
was great content."
like wow, this kid's cool, man.
Yeah.
Like, wow,
like,
it's like you're a kid, you're a teenager. Like
yeah.
no offense, it's just the reality of it. Like I was the same when I was 15 or 16. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
offended, like because I mean I might because you know teenagers have egos and stuff, but that's just the reality of the situation too. I think that's another thing that's I don't think you mentioned that, but that's a big point too. I think for
He did
viewership at
mention it. He
least
did
is
mention it. He did mention
you
it.
did
Yeah.
okay. So yeah, but he also mentioned one other thing that I don't know if we talked too much about, but it also affects the other pro players and like, their scrim times too because they don't get to scrim earlier in the day. So if you like want actually that more stable life of the like 9 to 5 work and you treat Rocket League kind of like your work, then it's better for the current pros who are already like done because they actually can just spend time on Rocket League and then be done with it after like 5 or 6, right?
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up
But
too. That was the other thing you touched on was that the issue with having these younger players in the scene because they presumably are most of them even when they're not pro teams stay in high school is that like they can't start scrimming till like evening times. And the issue with scrimming at evening times is that takes up your whole evening, and even for these older players, it takes up your whole evening when you're supposed to be like, maybe doing other things, whether you like, whether it's streaming or I don't know, going out for dinner, etc.
Homework.
And
hanging
that's
out
the
with
current
friends.
issue with like a lot of the Rock League scene is like their biggest scrim times are in the evenings, and then what are you gonna do from there? It like takes up your whole evening, and you do nothing during the day when everyone else is working or at school or doing projects because that's kind of like what people do during the day regularly. So if they made the age limit a little older, it would kind of like I think lend to more flexibility where like teams would start doing scrim times earlier in the day, not super early. Gamers still get up late, but they'd scrim from like maybe noon till 5, and that would be block of their scrims, and then they can do the night. They can do replay reviews and a dinner, or maybe they can like stream to the fans, etc. Like it allow a lot more like better things for the scene, or they can take the day off. They can do whatever they want with it. Essentially, they have more flexibility and options. And I don't know if people follow like other sports scene, but I can say from my experience watching League of Legends, their age limit is like 17 plus for the pro leagues, and like the way their like job works is like they scrim from like 1 to 6 or something, and then I mean they're grinders, so they just go play League of Legends solo queue for the rest of the day, but like at least left the opportunity of like they do it earlier because they're kind of like a little older and it's all processed into their stream. And the other thing too is like the last year for League of Legends is they had a rookie who was 17 named Jojo Pion, who was one of the most interesting personalities of the LCS that year. And I think I agree if he went pro at 15, I don't think it would have been the same. It was because he kind of was given 2 years in League of Legends only let 17 plus players like be pro in the league. So like I think kind of like him being a little older, 17, 18, let him really like showcase his personality of a rookie, and it was really cool to see him be like super cocky, etc. for the whole year. And it was it was fun to see. It was like, and I wish Rocket League, I think if you made it like 17 plus, you'd see more of that, where like, you know, the next Daniel would come in, but he'd come in with like a personality because he had time to develop it when he wasn't just like a pro player at 15. But yeah.
Okay, that's fair. Like, I mean, I personally don't really care about the scrim times at all.
Yeah,
But
we wouldn't.
do-
But
That was weird, though.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that doesn't matter as a viewer. Like, I understand as a player, it would make more sense for you to have like flexibility during the day. I'm more concerned as a fan. It's like, I do agree that sure, a 15-year-old can do some crazy double flip resets, but I've never been able to really cheer for someone under the age of 17. Like, it's just difficult for me to cheer on a kid. Like, I don't like, I'll be like, sure, I hope they do well, but like, I don't
Like,
know, they don't
personally
have
be
a
a fan of
personality.
them,
They don't have a
right?
personality. Like,
Yeah.
how am I supposed to be a big fan of you? Like, you're already a kid.
There are
I mean,
exceptions. There are exceptions. So like, but the average in Rocket League is most 15-year-olds that come and don't have a personality. I mean, the only exceptions I can think of was Scrub Killer. Scrub Killer was amazing at 15, but he was like streaming.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, he's cringe, but like Joyo kind of had a better personality when he was younger. But
he when he got popular, he was like still 16.
was he like 16, 17? Yeah, he might have maybe when it was like on the older side. Yeah,
It took him a year to like really get like.
yeah.
I mean,
On a
if
good
anything, you've
scene to
just seen
rise.
toxicity from little kids, and then I think that goes back to what Jack's point was, that it kind of ruins both social relationships and in terms of your team, right? Like, you have three little toxic kids on a team together. How do you think? And then they disband after like a month together. It's like, well, what do you think happened? But
Mhm.
like the mental and was clearly not there.
Like I know I say this like stuff when I like Daniel's one of my favorite players. I know he's a lot of people's favorite players, but I think like people would be even bigger fans if we got to see more of his personality and like if he was a little bit older and like had more time to just grow his brain, his social brain a little bit more. So
I think
And the
another good
other thing
example
is
of that is Arsenal. Arsenal, when he kind of like first went pro, had nothing, and then look at him now, like the personality he became. But it kind of required him to be like, I don't think he got that till like 18, 19, like in the last year. He didn't really get that till like kind of his last year when he was like older, sort of thing. There's a lot of good examples of that where like people really started to come to their own, but it wasn't until they turned like 18, later into 17, where they really kind of started to show it.
even Appjack and Noli, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if Noli went pro though when he was 16. I don't think he went pro till he was a little older.
Maybe 17, but like
Yeah.
he was still like throwing his controller when he was mad and stuff. So, but now he's like, oh, I love Joji. I love going on dates. No, he's a cool guy now, but like,
It's actually interesting. I wonder why Psyonix even chose 15 when every other esport has 17 and 18 as the minimum.
Well, that's not true. We can that was the other thing I want to talk about in this topic that wasn't mentioned in Appjack's tweet.
Okay,
But
maybe except for Halo. Okay.
yeah, Halo's 13 plus. I'm not going to count Fortnite's on esport, guys. BR doesn't count. But Halo's 13 plus. But the thing with and I wanted to get into this is also I think CS:GO is 16 plus, Dota 2 is 18 plus. This is just what I googled. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but this is what Google told me. COD's 18 plus. Generally, I think most are 16 to 18 plus, with the exception of Halo, and Rocket League. But the thing about those games is that their culture around the game is different, especially with CS:GO, right? So CS:GO 16 plus isn't much older of an age limit than Rocket League in comparison, because we want to be at 17 plus, right? But the thing with CS:GO is like, since it's such an old game from like the 2000s stuff, the culture around it shifted where like it doesn't allow for a team of 16-year-olds to run the scene. The scene is just such like at a mature level. The rookies that come in and stuff are only like one at a time at 16 plus. So it works because they're on a team with like all 20-year-olds. So they're going to mature faster. They're going to have people to look up to and like kind of like just handle the situation much better because of the larger team size and the scene just being more mature and older and had such kind of like deep roots in that maturity level. It doesn't matter. Like there just will never be a team of 16-year-olds in CS:GO. That will literally never happen just because of the way the culture was brought up. But Rocket League had the issue of like the culture is just too young. So we do have the team of 3 15-year-olds or 3 16-year-olds and stuff coming up, and we don't have the same thing of CS:GO where like the culture is just old, so it doesn't matter that the age limit is low. In Rocket League, it's just like the maturity and like culture of it is just too young. which is the issue. So you kind of need to force it to be older. It's kind of like my take on why Rocket League's bad compared to other esports. It's just the culture's bad, and the only way to fix it is through a rule change because you can't really change culture quickly. That's like impossible to change. So now, why the culture like that in Rocket League? I think the difference we see from it to other esports is CRL, especially in North America, where it kind of got in this thing because CRL has been around for years where like when you get 18 plus, you kind of stop competing and you go play CRL instead. And you see it with like a lot of players, and I think it's why a lot of older players stop trying to go pro because they just put all the time into CRL instead of like other games where like CSGO, if at that same age you would have kept trying to go pro instead of putting all your time into CRL. But that's just the only noticeable difference I can see between this esports for it. But
That could be a factor.
and I know that was true for me personally, but maybe I'm a bit biased, but that's just my view on it.
Yeah, no, I think they definitely have to do something about the rule change. It would help. I think it would definitely help the esport.
No, there's
Only
anything.
people-
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only people that are like, the only person I've seen or saw in the replies that were like, I completely disagree with this idea was like a 16-year-old. So, like bias there.
I mean, obviously, under 17, you're not gonna like what Jack said.
Yeah.
And since 16 is so young, I think that's exactly why so many people don't like it. They're like, "What? I'm 14 years old. What's wrong with me?" Blah blah blah. Like,
That's the issue though. Is like, if the comments are overwhelmingly like against it, it's because the culture of Rocket League is so young, and what person under like 16, 17 would agree with this? Not a single one, because they're immature and they don't really understand the process of like aging and getting like a proper development in your youth.
it's only after you reach that age then you'll understand what Jack is really talking
Yeah.
about. I don't think even myself at 15 would look at
I
that
wouldn't
tweet and
have.
be like, "Yeah, I understand what Jack means."
You probably be disagreeing. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think it's more like, yeah, it sucks that like older people have a better view on like development, but I think it is true because like I think maybe we'll start to we won't see it for like the next 5 years the effect it has, but we might have certain pros who, maybe they were pro for like 2 years, they made a couple 100,000, and then they didn't get a job because not everyone can be a caster, not everyone can be a streamer, especially in the Rocket League sphere, right? There's not enough space for everyone. What are they going to do? They don't have a high school degree. They have a little bit of money to live for a bit, but that's it. Like, what are you gonna do?
Yep. Become a coach, but like probably not.
You can't all become a coach because the coaches, as the scene goes more and more, the old coaches are going to stay and people are going to want them because they're experienced. And what matters in coaching is experience, not that you were a pro player. Like, are you going to pick Turbo Pulsa as a coach, or are you going to pick a random 2-year-old, 17-year-old pro player? You're going to pick Turbo Pulsa like every time if you want to coach, but. Yeah, it's just a interesting spot, and I just agree with Appjack on like the general notion. I don't think Soundix will do anything, and it's not that the current one will fail. I don't think it will. I think it's like it's fine to keep the game going. It's just if nothing is done, we'll continue to see super short pro careers for no reason other than burnout or psychological factors, and we're just going to keep seeing young teams in a young culture that might throw away older fans from watching and throw away people from watching as they grow older and mature because they don't like the general content and vibe of the esports giving off.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Okay, fair enough.
That's it though. That's all I have on that. But if anyone else has anything else to add, I do agree with you on something that's like personally, I mean, I don't really care if they make the change or not. I think it's right, but I don't think it's necessarily wrong if they don't do anything because it's just kind of the culture they said, and there's nothing particularly wrong with it. It's just an idea on what you think is like, I guess, right or not for players.
Yeah, well, I don't really have anything else to add.
Well, I think that's it. That's all the topics we had for today. So everyone, if you made it this far, thanks for coming out. Hopefully we'll have some roster change rumors to talk about in the upcoming weeks. I'm sure we will. And next week, obviously, I think we're going to take it off just because it's Christmas, and I think a lot of us here, or maybe it's just me, celebrate Christmas. But yeah, we'll take next week off, and then we'll see you guys on the week after for the next episode. And that's all for now. See ya.
See ya.